Ready to get started?
We can definitely turn the sound on. I feel like there should be background music or something.
Right. Can you hear me, Jillian?
Yeah, the question 6 you guys were seeing was actually my screen when I opened up the poll. Just trying to get a handle on where everybody's from and what you're hoping to get out of this, because over the next hour, my goal is to kind of, give you a good foundation of food photography and product photography. But at the end of the day, my main goal is to customize the conversation and help you guys get better with your own skills.
All right, so I think we're ready to go ahead and get started, Jillian, if you're ready.
Yep, I'll pull it back up.
Cool. So first of all, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a really fun class. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very excited to learn about food photography and also just look at some delicious pictures of food. We've got Jillian here with Tamron, and we love Tamron. We've been doing some really fun sessions with them really every Tuesday for the past few months, which has certainly been a nice way to pass the time. And we've got a great class for you today, food and product photography. And this is going to be really fun. We have had this poll up on the screen at the beginning. Don't worry if you didn't get to answer the poll. We could probably bring it back at the end and see some more results from everyone. But this will be mostly a lecture-based presentation, and feel free to ask questions throughout class, but we will also have a little time at the end to answer some more questions. We also have Sarah from Tamron that will be in the chat box that will additionally be able to help you answer any kind of questions you may have. And I'm also here to help you if you have any kind of technical questions. Refreshing your page is always really the first thing I say if you have any problems viewing the presentation. Otherwise, this is going to be recorded, so you will be able to watch this at a later date if for some reason you need to leave or you run into an issue. So after all that, Jillian, I will let you go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. And it's so good to be back. If any of you saw me last time, I was working with Precision Camera University. It was with my macro class back in April when this whole thing got started. I'm back with you today talking about food and product photography. We were tasked, so I'm a national technical representative from Tamron. I've been with them for about 9 years now. But before this role as an educator and a photographer, I was actually I was a commercial food photographer and stylist here in the Minneapolis area. I had a freelance business. I worked retail as management behind the counter. And when I was tasked to come up with another class, I was sitting here thinking, okay, what else do I photograph? What else am I passionate about other than macro? Because Sarah knows this. If any of you have ever met me, you know this. I'm a macro photographer first and foremost. I can walk into a portrait session and turn it into a macro shoot or something about a necklace or product or something like that. That's just how I see the world. And I'm really excited to share this with you guys today. The other main thing I want to stress with this class is you do not have to be a chef. You do not have to like cooking to be a food photographer. Personally, give me a peanut butter sandwich and an apple and I'm happy. I'm not a foodie. I love puns. And this is just going to be a lot of fun. Frank, confirm you can hear me? I do not have an outside voice. I definitely have an inside voice. Perfect. Which is really funny why I'm a public speaker. This is what I love to do. On our menu today, number one, we're going to talk about angles and perspectives. So the 90-degree angle, shooting at a 45-degree angle, and photographing at an overhead angle. These are the three most common points of view in food and product photography, and you'll understand why. Secondly, we'll talk about lighting. So lighting in your photographs, this overall will shift the mood. And I'll talk about using diffuse light versus indirect light versus direct light and how that shifts the overall look of your photograph. Lastly, we'll get into styling. So where lighting shifts the mood, styling is going to shift the purpose. If we look at photographs for publications versus photographs for menus or commercial advertising, each element has their strengths and their overall look and feel, and we'll discuss which way you should try to make your photographs look if they are for a specific purpose. Styling, all of those little details makes a huge difference. I love that you guys are so active in the chat. Again, please, if you have any questions while I'm talking, there is time for question and answers. I really want to customize the conversation to whatever you guys are dealing with. The last thing I'll mention as we get started here, you really need to work fast if you are working with food specifically. Honestly, because in your photograph, you want that food to look fresh. You want your salads to be crisp. You want your soups to be hot. Even after 30 minutes, you can see there in the middle of the in the middle of this graph, the lettuce is already wilting. And the last thing we want is soggy salads. So what we'll do is, I will generally set up my scene and set up my plates, my lighting, my exposure. I'll get everything dialed in with a placeholder. And then at the very last moment, I'll bring the food in. You'll put the dressing on at the last moment. You put the garnish on at the last moment. You'll drizzle the sauce at the last moment, just so it can be as fresh as possible. All right, number 1, angles and perspective. So this is just a noodle bowl, nothing fancy. Taken at a 45-degree angle, a 90-degree angle on the left, and the overhead view on the right, showing you that same subject, 3 different angles, 3 completely different looks. So think about what is the purpose of your photograph. We talk about a 90-degree angle when we want to showcase height. We want to showcase layering. We will see this 90-degree angle very common when we talk about sandwiches or pancakes, layer cakes, heights of frosting, a double stuffed Oreo, anything that you want to show that this thing is as tall as it can, you're getting the most for your money in these types of photographs. We also see this 90-degree point of view in product photography very often. This generally will convey this is a display. This is a great angle if you're trying to showcase a label or a specific product. We will compare now this 90-degree angle with a 45-degree angle. The 45-degree angle looks a lot more realistic, a lot softer. So these jewelry pieces, this is the same hand, this is the same setup. It goes from look at this watch to would you like to try it on? It's just a different purpose, a different visual mindset. We use this 45-degree angle also all the time in food. It's very common. Again, it's warm and inviting. I consider this a table view because if you think about the last time you sat down to dinner and someone put a plate in front of you, or you put the plate down yourself and then you got comfortable and sat down, when you look at your food that you're going to ingest, it is generally at a 45-degree angle. Comparing the 45-degree angle to this overhead perspective. The overhead perspective is kind of a fun way to play with shapes. It generally will give off more of an instructional feeling to it. So this would be, I would leave the negative space on the right-hand side for the recipe that it takes to make this dish. This is delicious, actually. Couscous and pomegranates and dates and onions. Again, I hope you all had lunch. We also use this overhead view when we want to show off a technique or a specific skill set. But more commonly, we're going to use this overhead view when we want to show a process or a deconstructed dish. I'll get into how this is very common in publications when we get to the styling aspect of this presentation. Wanted to amend section 1 for just a moment to talk about lens selection. In this 90-degree angle, this point of view, I get that question often of, which lens do I want to use for which kind of shots? And usually in this 90-degree angle, I'm going to choose a focal length somewhere in between an 85 millimeter and a 200 millimeter. Again, it's more about a display. It's more about showcasing a product. The background I want to drop out. I want it to be non-distracting. So I'm going to use a slightly telephoto range, like a 70 to 200 you'll see in these photographs. The 35 to 150 is a really good all-in-one lens that will cover overhead 45 and 90 if you're looking for something that's very versatile that'll be able to take care of a lot of photographs for you. In the 45-degree angle, this point of view, usually I will use something between a 45 and a 90 millimeter. I want these to look more realistic. I want them to look more natural. So you'll see I'll use the 45 millimeter 1.8. I'll use the 85 millimeter 1.8 because in these scenes, I want to showcase a little bit of the environment, a little bit about the background, but I need it to drop out. I still need it to be soft so it's not distracting. And then the overhead view, I'm going to usually choose something in between 24 and 70. So the 24 to 70 works really well here. Again, the 35 millimeters nice and wide enough. 28 to 75 in the Sony range. This is because when I'm shooting overhead, I'm generally either on a tabletop tripod shooting down, or I'm literally standing up over the counter trying to photograph down, and I need something a little bit wider to get the whole scene in. All right. Number 2, lighting. Again, this shifts the mood. In a diffuse light situation, this is going to be the softest light. This is going to be low contrast. Indirect light, we have better contrast and dimension. And then we have direct light, which has the most contrast, the most shadows. In diffuse light, we'll start here. It's soft, low contrast imagery. Use even lighting techniques, and then you can add the contrast back in for better control. The idea here is it's going to be even light. It doesn't matter. Where'd you go? There it is. Sorry about that. It doesn't matter if it's going to be window light or LEDs or strobes. The idea here is that you've got light on both sides. Here with the whiskey glass, sorry, there's no tequila. We've got 3 lights on this scene, actually. I've got a light on this side. I've got another light on this side. And then I've also got a little LED light up underneath the glass. And we do that so that we have the soft light left to right to wrap around the glass and just allow me to put in a little bit of that clarity, a little bit more of that saturation after the fact. But the light underneath is going to light up the glass. It's going to give the liquid a little bit more contrast, a little bit more saturation, and it just makes the whole thing pop. Next. Now this is a classic product photography shot. So in my setups, what I do generally is I find like 12 by 12 pieces of things where it's either slate, that's dark, that's white, that's gray, that's neutral. I'll use slat wood or like old barn wood cut in foot and a half sections so I can create backdrops. This one was created with a light tent. And if anyone's getting into photographing products or things that they make that they're trying to sell, a light tent is a really great accessory that you can get that provides just a nice seamless background. You can do diffuse light on either side. This is the setup there. My wonderful little drawing. The key with working with a light tent is you have to use side-to-side lights. Again, these could be window lights. This could be outside on a sunny day. It could be LEDs on either side. It can literally be strobes on either side, but you want side-to-side lights. You want that even diffused light from left to right. I'll generally use one slightly in front and one generally slightly behind. This is going to help separate my subject from the background. And then the sweep is going to provide an even solid background. You don't have to heal out that line after the fact. It's just neutral. And anytime I'm going to use like a metal subject or something that is reflective, I'm going to use a polarizing filter, obviously, to help combat reflections and just help make the color cleaner, the saturation cleaner. Here's that watch again from before. So this is the same light tent, just with a black sweep instead of a white sweep. I've got my one light. Let's do this. Got my one light right back here on that side of the light tent, and then I've got the other one kind of cupping this way so that I can illuminate the watch and separate that black hand from the black background. When you're choosing background fabrics, you know, a lot of times they will come with their own sweeps and fabrics, but if you're looking around at the remnant shops or the hobby shops, look for felt, look for velour, look for velvet. These are going to be great fabrics that will not reflect light back. They're just going to soak it all in. Again, it's less editing you have to do after the fact. Now, as my subjects get bigger and they don't necessarily fit in my light tent anymore, you can still use this diffuse lighting technique outside or in a non-enclosed environment. This photograph was some antique teacups. I paired it with the tea kettle in the back. And the lighting here you can obviously see is window light on the right-hand side. It's reflecting off that porcelain there. And then I used a whiteboard on the other side to balance that light to give me that diffused left to right even exposure. Good question, Stephen on Facebook. Any suggestions for product photos requiring an all white background? Slightly overexposure image. And what you can do, like in this image, and I'm answering this one now because it's really pertinent to what I'm talking about. Like, so this has an all white image. If I amped up the light a little bit more and made it brighter, I could completely knock out that background. I wanted it to look a little bit homier, so I kind of toned it down a little bit. But just having intense light on either side. This is a plastic white backdrop, and you can either set it on a white table. That is going to help with that black or that white background. Also, what I'll do sometimes is I'll find a piece of acrylic, like plastic or glass, and set my product on that. So if I'm really having a hard time knocking out the background, I'll grab a piece of glass, and I'll draw on this one more time, and I'll actually put a piece of glass out of frame. Oh, come here. There we go. And I'll set this on there. Of course, the stand's being off out of frame. And that's going to elevate your product outside or off the background. And that way you can use, you know, a little bit of editing to select your background and just knock it out after the fact. It takes a little bit of work if you need to do that. But once you get the system down, it's really, it's factory. It's really just repetitive. I hope that helps. These tea kettles and these cups is more of a, it's a chair and window light. That's what the setup looks like here. And if you don't have a big flat chair with a hard back, you can use a table. You just need something to prop up that fabric. This is using a white bed sheet, sweeping it up and over the chair, and then setting my subjects right on top of it. And this is my setup 99% of the time when I'm doing indoor indirect light. I like indirect light, very, very commonly used in my work because it has a little more contrast and shadows you can play with. This is a great method for showcasing texture. And then natural light setup can simply be used by using a window and a chair. In indirect lighting, I'm not necessarily going to use that whiteboard on the other side to, again, even out the exposure left to right. I want those shadows to show through. I want a brighter main light. In this example, shooting overhead with the 28-75. I set a cutting board down on the chair. You can see the light coming up from this upper right-hand side here because we get all of these wonderful shadows on these almonds, giving them texture, giving them breadth and dimension. Same sort of thing under here with the chocolate. These shadows are going to help give dimension to your photograph. Same sort of thing with a slice of pizza. It was really kind of fun bringing up a new batch of images for this class and just kind of, you know, getting the rust off, getting back into it. In this photograph, this is up just on a table that I have in the dining room right next to an open window. And in this one, I wanted those highlights to show. I wanted that bright light coming from the left-hand side. Again, you can see the shadow there coming off the pizza, giving it dimension, giving it shape. Here, I wouldn't use a polarizing filter or anything because you want it to glisten, you want it to be fresh and gooey and greasy and all of the things that frozen pizza should be and anything that pizza should be. But that side light, again, is going to help give dimension to all those little ingredients and all those little pieces to make this a wonderful photograph. The other thing you can do with indirect light is you can use open shade. So in this scene, I was just underneath my deck on a semi-cloudy day. If it was sunny outside, my shadows would be more defined and I might have to reflect those back in so it's not as harsh. I wanted this soft, I wanted this natural looking. Again, light source is coming up from the upper left-hand corner. I do that a lot. That's my style. That's how you know it's mine. But the shadows pulling forward, falling just forward over those onions and the cactus, again, same story. Gives it dimension, gives it shape. We'll use this lighting very often if you're trying to showcase like frosting or fruits. Strawberries look really well in this scene too. All of those little seeds and all the little textures that come with strawberries. The hard part really gets into the styling, the nuance of it. When we talk about direct light, so this has the most contrast and the most shadows. Side lighting, again, is preferred, just like we've been talking about this whole time, but be mindful of your shadow placement. The other thing I'll note with direct light, it is high contrast, it is high saturation, so if you're taking photographs in a JPEG setting, make sure you're not on Vivid, make sure you're not on landscape, make sure your color profile is more on neutral or standard or faithful, something that is less punchy, because again, it's easier to add it back in after the fact than it is to take it away if you've got too much. Here's a great example of that. This is a little Porsche car. It's a model car, about this big. But I wanted to photograph it in a way that reminds me of like a big warehouse or a Quonset garage. What kind of lighting would that have? The ones I experience have like fluorescent strip lighting up on top. I wanted it to seem high contrast. This is with a white sweep, paper sweep on a tabletop tripod, or like a tabletop setup for shooting products. The lighting, here's the behind the scenes. The lighting is kind of cool. This is very DIY. We went to the hardware store and we got a strip light. And then we put the strip light in a shoebox that had wax paper over the front of it. So it diffused it a little bit, but you still had that hot spotlight look, that fluorescent strip light look. Now I know there's strip lights available at Precision, and that's another thing you can definitely do. But the idea here was just to create something that reminded me of fluorescent lighting and just a really easy way to set up kind of a funky artistic scene. The next one, Lemonade. This one I set up a bright sunny day, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was probably 85 degrees that day. You can literally see the condensation on that glass. And the hardest part here, so I knew I wanted direct light. I knew I wanted to see the shadows. I wanted a bright summer picnic kind of feel. But the hard thing was this shadow here with the cup. This was my hardest part right here. Right here, this guy. I did not want this shadow to fall over the lemons, so it had to be pushed out of the way. Well, I'm sorry, you guys, if you can't hear me. Make sure your volume's turned up. And then the styling, because that's the next section we get into, it revolved around that plastic juicer that I had. If I had a wooden or more natural juicer, the cup would have been a mason jar. The cutting board would have been a wooden or a stone cutting board. But because I had that white plastic juicer, I needed that bright yellow, 50s inspired, Pyrex inspired little cutting board. Same mimicking color with the knife. And then the glass was just another fun, solid pop of color. This allowed me to use a better texture, a more fun, vibrant texture on the background. And then when I was setting this up outside, it's set up on an apple box on top of my deck. full sun, and I picked it up and literally walked around in a circle, watching that cup, watching that shadow to figure out what direction do I need to photograph this from. Here's another one from that same day. My lunch was really good that day. This is avocado toast. Direct light here, that hard shadow underneath that plate helps this layered scene with height, gives it dimension and shape. When I was putting this together, I was trying to think, okay, I would order avocado toast in like a hipster, trending, but industrial sort of rustic place. And conveniently, I've got a wooden stamped cement in my backyard. That was the foundation with the wooden cutting board on top at the same angle as those lines. And then the antiques handkerchief, because it was a rustic feel, but I wanted a softer feel than just like a regular bandana. Crisp plate, because it's more of a restaurant, it's more of an upscale place. And then literally the food itself, the subject is panini bread, avocado, sea salt, and oil, olive oil. Nothing fancy about it. But when I put it on the plate first, the thought, it was too simple. And I was, again, thinking back to whenever I've ordered this in life, in a restaurant, and it's always cut at that funky hard angle, and it's always kind of tented up on itself. So that to me was the final piece of this plate that just kind of brought everything together. Lastly, let's talk about styling. Again, this shifts the purpose. Photos that you're going to take for publications, books, blogs, and magazines are going to have a different look than photos that you use for restaurants or menus. And then photos for commercial advertising is going to have a completely different look as well. You can kind of blend them, but overall, the purpose is different and the way they look is supposed to be different. We'll start with publications. Here, the overall feeling is generally softer. It's warm and inviting. The overhead point of view is common because, again, in like a blog post or a magazine post, we are highlighting a recipe, we're highlighting an idea, a process, something like that. The deconstructed view is very common here. And then think about the vibe, or what story are you telling? What is, where is this place being presented? Here's the first one. Healthy snacks. This photo derived from the fact that I'm on the road all the time. Before we were taken off and encouraged to stay home, I was on the road 175 days a year, teaching, traveling, leading workshops, working with all of you in store and with Sarah when she needs help in her territory. And if you're not careful, you can eat out way too much. And you can go to fast food because you're in a hurry and you're trying to get somewhere. And generally, the tech team and I, we will go to grocery stores, we'll go to the deli counter. And personally, I love charcuterie plates. Again, my tastes are simple. I love just little pieces of things. So I picked this up for lunch. And the shapes, this is how I see the world. I saw all of those repeating circles. And I'm sitting here looking at my lunch thinking, this is really healthy. I'm doing really good. This is a good day. Simple stuff. And that's where this photograph kind of derived from. Lining up all those simple circles, that repeating shape, writing a blog about it, giving it a title of healthy snacks while traveling. The green beans give you that pop of color. The red, the green, the contrast there works for me. It's just kind of fun. Could you show us that last slide really fast? Which one? This one? Ah, there you go, Delana. Photos for publications. I'm not opposed to you guys taking screenshots of the text if you can't write fast enough. You just can't save the whole presentation for your own work. You're welcome. All right, let me bring up that chocolate bar again. I wanted to touch on the styling. This one's my favorite. One, because dark chocolate is just amazing. And this was a dark chocolate sea salt and almond bar. that I just picked up at the grocery store, and I wanted to photograph it, trying to think about, how does dark chocolate make me feel? How does dark chocolate connect with people? It's comforting, it's warm, it's probably addicting. And how can I photograph it in a food setting, in a publication type setting? So for this one with the overhead shot, I'm thinking, okay, overhead angle, it's going to be deconstructed. I can showcase the ingredients. Chose the dark cutting board because I knew I wanted the sea salt to kind of jump out and give that a brighter life. The almonds wrapping around, giving that a softer rounded shape versus the hard square edges on the chocolate bar, I think was a good juxtaposition. Wrapping around the chocolate, just again, encasing, warming, brightening your day a little bit. Lighting here. Again, there was one right there. I love that I figured out this draw function. And then I did have a second light right here, but it was really dim, again, just to help light up the chocolate. Next one. If you've got a sweet tooth, you're going to love these macaroons. This is another one. So for publications, this one was for like a little bakery. In my mind, this is a story that I'm telling myself because it's honestly been a long time since I've been a working freelance photographer. But macaroons, again, I bought at the shop. The jar comes from the fact that these are all sort of jam flavors. So I've got key lime pie, I've got lemon meringue, and then this is strawberry shortcake. So I'm thinking fun, I'm thinking sweet, I'm thinking jam, and I'm thinking homey. This is just like a cute little mom and pop shop that is wonderfully delicious when they make things. Lighting, window light from one side, a little bit of a reflector on the other side. Pretty simple setup, 35 millimeter, because it gives it a little bit more of a wrapped environmental perspective versus it allowed the background to really just kind of help fill in the frame. Lastly, no, not lastly, second to last, photos for menus. So publications, like I said, are warm and inviting. They're instructional. Photos for menus is a little different in the fact that the overall feeling here is generally alluring and delicious. The purpose here is to get you to order the thing that they're showing you and to envision yourself eating it. So 45-degree point of view is very common. Again, this is that table view. The restaurant wants you to picture yourself ordering it, eating it, enjoying it, and having a good time. The imagery here also highlights a product or an atmosphere. So think about the type of store or restaurant that this image or this item could be found in. Little things are going to make a huge difference. So just a simple fact to swap out the pasta. You go from an upscale restaurant to a family dining establishment. Same bowl, same, this is just a quick example shot, but you can see how the ingredients that you use will, again, it'll shift the mood, it'll shift the type of place that you'll find this dish in. This one here, this is using, again, that simple chair backdrop, window light scene, no reflector needed. Using more of a telephoto lens so that I can highlight just the one mussel out of the whole bowl, and that allowed me to really kind of knock out the background and sweep it from focus to out of focus. Clean, classic environment here. Tells you what type of restaurant it is. So in this one, this would be highlighting a photograph on a beverage menu. Just a simple slushy lemonade on a hot summer day. I'm envisioning like a 50s drive up, classic, updated, modern with the vintage nod to the glassware, classic styling, but more of a modern environment, minimalistic, mid-century modern, that sort of thing. I tell myself a lot of stories in my head when I'm creating these images, because that really helps. It kind of pulls all the little details together. And if you ever think about wanting to be a food photographer and really get into this, the best thing you can do is go to like an antique store or garage sales, flea markets, what have you, and just get a mishmash of different cutlery, different plates, different bowls, different cups, because that in itself is going to tell the story. That is going to be the styling aspect that changes from photo to photo. None of my dishes match. Having a fresh set of just clean white plates is very restaurant as well. So if you're trying to go the menu route or the restaurant route, having white plates is just really simple. You can style the rest of the scene around that white crisp base. Sandwich here. So sometimes you will see a 90-degree perspective to highlight the food. Here, a simple sandwich wanting to showcase the layers, the stacking of all the ingredients, the height of that sandwich, but it's still environmental. So I'm using a 45mm lens here because I want it to look normal to the viewer, and I want to kind of include that long table, kind of that gray backwash in the background. This tells me the story of not necessarily a sports bar, because that would be like a burger and fries, but maybe like a rustic sandwich shop that happens to have like aluminum siding on the walls or something cool like that. Now, when we talk about photographs for advertising, in comparison to menu photos and publication photos, the overall feeling here is going to be bold, it's going to be colorful, it's going to be full of contrast. The 90-degree angle point of view is very common, again, because we want to showcase the label, we want to showcase the brand, and that is the most important thing. Imagery here, similar to menu photographs, it's clean styling to showcase the product. You don't want distractions. And then any colors that you're going to use are going to be in line with your brand. If you really want to get into commercial advertising photographs, do yourself a favor and get a good custom white balance calibrator. You can calibrate your monitor. The reason for this is because, if you're photographing a brand, their colors are trademarked. You have to be spot on with the specific brown of that Hershey bar, or, the yellow on the 7-Up label that'll have it a couple of slides moving forward. That color is a specific color, and if you don't get it right, you might not get paid, and you might have to reshoot the whole thing. So figure out what white balance works for you, and if you don't know how to do that, talk to Precision. They can walk you through it. There's a lot of different options, and that makes a difference. For advertising, when I used to, again, do this for my living, I use strobe lights. These are almost always used because it gives you a better crispness and clarity than natural light. A friend told me once that it's the difference between a magazine shoot and a normal natural light shoot. There's just something about that commercial quality that has to be crisp and clear, and have clarity to it, that really only strobe lights can give you. And to go back to that sandwich shot, so this is for a menu, this is for a restaurant. If I compare a sandwich photograph for an ad per se, it's going to look more like this. Really highlighting the ingredients, really highlighting the height. That turkey is really crisp and flaky. There's always a face to a sandwich, so a front-facing side. That is the side you style. If you were to turn this thing around to the opposite side, the side that was not being photographed, it would be very plain. The onions, the purple onions, that's just a couple of slivers that I tucked in right underneath the turkey instead of having a whole slice, because I could put it exactly where I wanted it. If this had dressing on it, like mustard, mayo, ketchup, whatever, that would be put on with a squeeze bottle. Again, it's about putting those things in the exact places where you want them. You don't want to just make a sandwich. There's a nuance to it. There's an art form to it. And then you're picking the greenest lettuce. You're picking the best tomatoes. You're picking, you're melting the cheese with a blowtorch, that sort of thing. There's, like I said, there's a production about it. If you were to look up food photography in a commercial setting, there are a lot of tricks of the trade that aren't edible. Paint, glycerin, hair products, things like that. If I need a little bit of sheen on this, I'm going to put olive oil in a spritzer and just go ch-ch-ch. I never like to style my food in such a way that isn't going to be realistic for my customer. And really, I want to eat it at the end of the day, because that's why I'm here. Here's another one. This one to me was for, in my mind, I'm thinking Prosecco, I'm thinking celebration, New Year's Eve, something along that lines. So Prosecco or champagne, I think gold. So I have the gold wood, that second plate to separate the glass, repeat that circular shape with the shadow in front, the beads, the fanfare on the bottom, little strawberries in there to make it fancy. The background lights that you see are just simple Christmas lights that I've knocked out of focus, photographing this one more at like an f4 versus an f8 to really kind of give me that shallow depth of field. You don't have to go out and buy a very expensive bottle of champagne. This honestly is apple juice and club soda for the bubbles. It's cheaper that way. One of the last examples I have is another overhead view showing you how your lens selection does make a difference, especially in this overhead view. You know, we all know about wide angle expansion and telephoto compression. In this photograph, this was a soup that I made at home from a bunch of different leftover ingredients, but in my mind, I'm thinking Progresso. So I'm thinking hearty and warm and you know, just full of texture. So I wanted to highlight all the different ingredients I had in there. I wanted to think every day, so I wanted to include the bowl and just encase that spoon and kind of repeat that circular pattern. The key here is with the 75 millimeter, so I back up a little bit and I zoom in, that allows me to fill the frame with the bowl and that circular shape. If I take the same photograph at 28, the bowl gets smaller. You see that? Wide angle expansion, the further away that bowl gets from the spoon, the smaller it's going to seem. And this, to me, is less impactful than this. Lastly, I'm going to showcase just something fun that you can do at home with the things in your pantry. 7-Up, bringing my light tent back out, putting this image together. This is actually 3 different images that are compiled together, and I'll show you that, but it's punchy. That red has to be the exact right red. The green has to be the exact right green. Where are my words today? And this is kind of the buildup. This is the first image here. Using that sweep, because I knew I wanted that white background so it'd be easy to drop out. Photographing it, of course, a little less contrasty, a little less saturated so I can put it back in after the fact. The second image you see, again with the 90 millimeter, is a glass of 7-Up, and I focused on the bubbles. Using the bottom of the glass, transposing it down and reflecting it will give me that background line, that hard background line, so it looks like it's sitting on something. And then if you haven't noticed, I cloned out the barcode as well, and I took out this little reflection right here. That was in post-production. I think it turned out really well. The last slide, before we actually get to the conversation, I just wanted to show you 3 different ideas involving lemons. 3 different purposes, 3 different photographs, same sort of subject matter. You know, on the left, we've got our blog post about a summer picnic, about a lemonade recipe that maybe your kids can sell at a stand. It's fun, it's summery, it's vibrant and colorful. Comparing it to the middle, a slushy lemon drink that you could get at a drive-up or at a restaurant. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, that commercial advertising shot of that product of the 7-Up, that lemon beverage. I hope you've enjoyed it. What can we talk about? How are you guys doing in there? I love how active the chat's been going. I've been seeing it kind of scroll down, but I haven't read it too terribly much. If you see me smiling during the middle of it, it's honestly because I'm trying to read the chat at the same time. Tell us about the light under the whiskey glass. Thanks. And then, Bryn, if you want to kind of scroll through the chat, or Sarah, if you want to scroll through the chats and highlight anything I missed, let me know. Vicky says, tell us about the light under the whiskey glass. And let me go back to that picture. That one was a lot of fun. And it's a trick that I learned from an old friend of mine. He's still in the industry, bopping around on the East Coast. Let me find it. Here it is. So the whiskey glass. So this is barnwood as your background. So I've got a bunch of slat wood that's about 18 inches long. I've also got a bunch of odd pieces and ends. And so what I did was I used slat board here. This is old barnwood. So here, here, and here. And then that was right angled up against this piece. This is 2 pieces of barnwood, and then this is a 3rd piece of barnwood. And so underneath this napkin is a little LED pop light that's like this big. And thankfully it was the same height, or it was the same height as the barnwood. And so that middle slat is actually 2 pieces that has a separation in it that light is sitting underneath. Sitting right here. Hiding it with the napkin is just clever. And when we light our glasses up underneath, I encourage you all to try this. And honestly, I've done it with my cell phone. So you turn on your flashlight with your cell phone and you put it up under your glass. And the color is automatically brighter. The vibrancy is there. It just kind of lights up the beverage. All right. How did you get picked to shoot for companies? That's the hustle of freelance photography, let me tell you. It kind of started because I knew people who were chefs and who were cooks in restaurants. I also used local advertising, and so we've got something called City Pages here in Minneapolis, and I guarantee Austin has a publication like this where it talks about restaurants, it talks about local hangouts and things like that. Create a portfolio, and some of this first stuff was before these new examples. Some of my first works were literally on trade, so I'd know people who were trying out new dishes, or trying to get their own. Really, just friends who like to cook was another thing too. And it's like, hey, I'll buy all your ingredients if I can take photographs of them and use them in my portfolio. And generally, they jump at the chance. And so once you kind of get a collection of images that you can showcase, some of it also was walking into restaurants that I had eaten at, and I noticed their menu was suffering, and said, hey, I do this for a living. Have you ever thought about updating your menu? If you do, please give me a call. Like it's a hard hustle, and it pays up. It works out. I mean, you get one client, and then the one client helps refer you to somebody else, helps refer you to somebody else. You can do corporate headshots. That works really well too at the same time. All right, scrolling up. What is your favorite aspect ratio for commercial shoots? Do you prefer to not crop your shots? I'm partial to 4:5 myself. That is a great question, Tristan. I am a cropaholic. To be all honest, I crop almost everything that I photograph. Sometimes because I don't know what the end result is going to be, like if it's especially something for a publication where I know they need to lay text over it, I'll take a couple of different examples with one in the center, one in the left, one in the right. It honestly will depend also on the focal length. So if I'm using more of a telephoto lens, 70 to 210, the 150 range of the 35 to 150 or the 70 to 200 here, I won't crop. Like I'll just frame it up in camera, and then I'll move it around and get my copy that way. If it's something like these birds that's more to 45, or this tea kettle that again is at a 45, there is definitely wiggle room on the left and right. And then I crop off the sides of the chair and the sides of the light 10 after the fact. Vertical versus horizontal, that honestly just depends on the product and like what I need to fill in the frame. Yes, this is definitely being recorded. Very sorry some of you are having issues. Steven, are you good on the all white background? I hope that helped. All right, going back to the bottom. For my macro, or for my food photography, Dub says, do you prefer macro, primes, or zooms? All of them. It depends on the purpose and how big my subject is. So honestly, if I'm going on a shoot and I'm not really sure what to expect, I will bring a zoom lens. I'll generally bring a 70 to 200 type range. And if I'm shooting with one of my mirrorless bodies, like I honestly have Canon, I've got Nikon, I've got Sony, I've got an Olympus pen in the back too. I've just kind of been collecting things. But if it's a smaller scene and I'm bringing like my little mirrorless camera, I love the 70 to 210 f4. It's just really nice and small, and I can adapt it to the Sony or the Canon R, the Nikon Z, that sort of thing. And actually, now that we have the 70 to 180 for Nikon or for Sony full frame, I bring that one out too. Pancake photograph that I took was taken with that. This one is gorgeous. Love that. 70 to 210 on a Canon R. If I'm doing light tent work, so product work that is small, I grab the 90. Just because this gives me the opportunity to not stick my whole head into the light tent, and I can focus more on the little details versus the whole scene if I need to. Overhead stuff, I'll either grab the 45 or like a 28 to 75 or this 24 to 70. I don't know, I just kind of bounce around. Primes are better for knocking out the backgrounds. Let me pull up that avocado toast again. This one, 85-1.8. Normally for portraiture, primes are going to give you just this wonderful wrap of shallow depth of field. This was taken at f4, I believe. So not even closed all the way down, or opened all the way up, sorry. But it's just beautiful how quickly everything just kind of drops out of focus, and you're just focused on that texture of the avocado. That one's been a new favorite too. Anything else you guys want? If you come up with something later and have questions later on, you can either find Sarah with Tamron on Facebook and Instagram. She is, again, your local sales rep. She's been doing all of these demos for you in the area. I'm Belle Tamron USA on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then, of course, Precision Camera there in Austin. The big thing is stay connected. I know they are open. I have a slide for that too. They are open, but they also are answering the phones. The big thing here, if you guys have a question, we won't know unless you ask. So please stay connected. Please show us what you're working on. I'm going to stop sharing so that you can get back to the poll. If you want to fill it out, you're more than welcome to. That's not what I want. This one. It's been just fun hanging out with you all today. Sarah, Bryn, do you guys have anything you want to ask or share? We can wrap up and let them answer the poll. Yep. Anything else I say is just banter, filling the time. So feel free to fill in the poll if you'd like, just to let me know where you guys are all at. I hope this was informational for you. I see a lot of yes, it was in the chat, so yay. You learn one thing, my job is done. That's all. That is my goal. I need you to take home one piece of one nougat of wonderfulness